You ever have to wear an unusual work uniform? Someone deciding to become a career criminal is a decision that isn't particularly strange. Choosing to do it while dressed in skin-tight spandex while shouting quippy one-liners is a little more unusual. Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. Today, we will be counting down the top 10 weirdest street-level villains. Let's jump right in. Number 10. The Hood. He dropped out of school and took up a life of crime in an attempt to provide for his mother. One night, while attempting to rob a warehouse, he was attacked by a cloaked demon who he shot, seemingly to death. Robbins decided to take a souvenir and stole the demon's boots and cloak. He soon found that the demonic clothing gave him supernatural powers, and he became the supervillain known as the Hood. He managed to use these powers to create a criminal empire, while all the heroes were busy fighting each other during the Civil War. The cloak's powers turned out to be from the demon Dormammu, who used the Hood in his plans to kill Doctor Strange, which all failed. The Hood tangled with several heroes, including Professor X and the Red Hulk, before eventually being defeated by Hawkeye, who made a deal with Count Nefaria to take away the Hood's powers. The Hood became obsessed with getting his powers back, eventually taking a comatose Spider-Man hostage in an effort to force Black Cat to get him his cloak back. This backfired when the cloak the Black Cat gave him turned out to actually be a demon bag, which ate Robbins, bringing his criminal career to a close. Number 9. Hammerhead. A former mob hitman whose skull was shattered in a brawl, Hammerhead's skull was reinforced with a steel alloy plate, which he uses to crash through walls and headbutt Spider-Man. As if that wasn't odd enough, because the last thing he saw before getting his head smashed in was a poster for a 20s gangster film, Hammerhead has taken on the persona of a 20s gangster. He first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man number 114, where he was involved in a gang war with Dr. Octopus. Hammerhead continued to tangle with Spider-Man for years, eventually having his brain transferred into a robotic adamantium skeleton by Mr. Negative. Number 8. Typhoid Mary. So this character's origin may be a bit triggering for victims of so if that's you, please feel free to skip ahead to the next entry. Okay, so as a child, Mary Walker was continuously SA'd by her father. This caused her to develop a secondary persona named Typhoid, who could defend her from her father. This persona had mutant powers such as telekinesis, telepathy, and most notably, pyrokinesis, the ability to control fire. The meek and mild Mary was put in an institution, but was later broken out by Typhoid. She worked as an actress for a time before eventually working in a masked Matt Murdock eventually came to confront a criminal, but was attacked by the women who were working there. In the ensuing fight, Mary was accidentally pushed out the window and was presumed dead by the other women and Murdock. She survived the fall, but developed another alter named Bloody Mary, who vowed to never be hurt by a man again. Typhoid Mary has spent the years since struggling for control with her various alters and working as a gun for hire for criminals such as the Kingpin. She has developed additional alters over the years, such as Walker, who functions somewhat as a moderator between the alters, and Mutant Zero, an operative working for the Initiative. Number 7. Great White Shark. Warren White was the Bernie Madoff of Gotham City, embezzling millions of dollars and destroying the pension funds of several of its inhabitants. Nicknamed the Great White Shark, Warren thought he had gotten off easy when he used his money and influence to cop an insanity plea, and was placed in a mental institution rather than a prison. Unfortunately for him, that mental institution was Arkham Asylum. Warren was considered the new fish in the asylum, and quickly became the punching bag for all the inmates. The stress of this eventually began to drive him insane. This culminated when Jane Doe locked him in Mr. Freeze's cell, causing him to be disfigured by frostbite. His skin was turned a pale shade of white. He lost a few fingers, his ears, his nose, his hair, and his lips. Deciding in his madness to lean into the gimmick, White filed his teeth to sharp points and embraced the identity of the Great White Shark. When Arkham was taken over by demons, Shark realized that he would likely go to hell when he died. So he made a deal with the demons that when he did go to hell, he would be spared the suffering and would instead get to torture all the inmates in the asylum who had made his life a living hell. He became one of Gotham's most notorious crime bosses, running his operations from his cell in Arkham in order to avoid suspicion. Number 6. Absorbing Man. After the death of his mother, Carl Creel's father became abusive towards him, eventually kicking him out to live on the street when he eventually tried to fight back. In order to survive, Creel engaged in petty theft to support himself while building his career as a boxer. He found some success in this field, and in an interesting turn of fate, was actually the boxer that Daredevil's father, Batlin Jack Murdoch, was supposed to lose to in a fixed boxing match. Murdoch refused to throw the fight, defeated Crusher, and as a result, was killed on the orders of the criminal the Fixer. Creel eventually became an enforcer for the Owl before eventually being arrested. While serving his sentence, he was chosen by Loki to be a pawn in one of his schemes against Thor. Loki spiked the inmate's water with Asgardian herbs that granted him the power to absorb the properties of any element he touched. He used his powers to absorb the powers and properties of Mjolnir, Thor's magical hammer, and was able to successfully take on the God of Thunder, although he was eventually defeated in a rematch. Number 5. Two-Face. Harvey eventually became the district attorney of Gotham and became essential in the efforts to reclaim the city from its mob influence. One day in court, Dent was interrogating a mob boss by the name of Salvatore Maroni, who threw a vial of acid in Harvey's face. The acid deformed the left side of Harvey's face, and the shock of this, combined with his underlying mental health issues, caused the district attorney to become the villain Two-Face. Two-Face is obsessed with chance as well as the number 2, often committing crimes that relate to the number. He uses a two-headed silver dollar, with one side scarred to reflect his own deformity, to determine whether or not to commit his crimes or murder his victims. Number 4. The Jester. After years of struggling, the egotistical actor was cast in a production of Cyrano de Bergerac, but his performance was not well received as he was booed by audience members and panned by critics and fired after the show's opening night. As all actors do, he eventually went insane, and with the help of the Tinkerer became the supervillain known as the Jester. He has gone on several bizarre crime sprees, such as when he used fake newscasts to convince people that JFK was alive and that the Vietnam War never occurred. He is tangled with Daredevil several times over the years, although he did retire for a time after successfully impersonating a famous actor named Benedict LaForge, and performing the role of Cyrano on TV in Daredevil number 218. Number 3. Killer Moth. When Drury Walker saw that the criminal element of Gotham City was being terrorized into submission by Batman, he realized that someone could make a lot of money by becoming the anti-Batman. Someone who the criminals could call upon in their hour of need to protect them from the Batman. Despite his best efforts, Killer Moth failed to be taken seriously as a villain, being laughed at by Gotham's underworld and being considered more of a nuisance than anything else by Batman. He is notable for being the first villain that Batgirl ever apprehended after he attempted to kidnap Bruce Wayne from a costume party where Barbara Gordon, who was dressed in a Batman-themed costume, defeated him. Number 2. Stiltman. First appearing in Daredevil number 8, Stiltman was a scientist named Wilbur Day who stole the plans for a hydraulic ram device in order to create telescopic metal legs, which allowed him to tower over the people of New York as Stiltman. He used the power of being tall to attack the scientist Carl Caxton multiple times in hopes of stealing the scientist's shrink ray. On one of these occasions, he hoped to use the device to shrink the Golden Gate Bridge, but was defeated by Daredevil and Black Widow. Number 1. The Ventriloquist. When he was a child, Arnold Wesker's parents took him to the Gotham City shipyards to see an albatross. The bird scared Arnold, who demanded to be taken home. While walking home, his parents were run over by a truck full of display dummies. He blamed himself for this and, as a result, bottled up all of his negative emotions like anger. Years later, Arnold had a psychotic break and killed a man during a bar fight and was sent to Blackgate Prison. His cellmate had carved a ventriloquist dummy out of the tree that the prison used to hang its inmates, and Wesker eventually believed that the dummy was talking to him. He killed his cellmate and escaped with the puppet. The puppet renamed himself Scarface, and the two went into a life of crime. Wesker is of course delusional, but his unsettling skill at ventriloquism provides him with an outlet for all of his negative emotions, with the puppet taking on a brutal and psychopathic personality as well as the persona of a 20s gangster. Those are the weirdest villains on this list. Any other street level villains who dip their toes into the pool of the bizarre? Let us know about them in the comments below, and remember to like this video and subscribe for more Top 10 Nerd.